Each file was probably about 250 megabytes, which is too many rows for Microsoft Excel to open it.
When they dump that much data on you on a Thursday and give you a deadline for Monday, what do you even do?
My first question was, do we have access to the equipment that actually gathered the data? I asked counsel this, and the answer was, of course, no. We don't know what equipment this was generated on. We have no real information. And also, it would be really cool to have some understanding of it by Monday because we have to meet with the judge.
Hello and welcome to On the Stand with Ashish Arun, where we explore the law, practice and business of expert witness testimony. I'm your host, the founder of Xlightum. We are building an AI-enabled platform transforming how attorneys find, retain and research expert witnesses. Today's guest represents the cutting edge of how AI is revolutionizing expert witness work. Dr. Seth Miller is the principal of Heron Scientific, a PhD chemist from Caltech with over 94 issued US patents. His innovations have shipped in billions of dollars of products worldwide, from the micromirrors in your projector to the batteries in electric vehicles. But here's what makes Dr. Miller particularly relevant for today's legal landscape. He's become a power user of AI tools in expert witness work. Just recently, he used ChatGPT to analyze 30 gigabytes of raw data dumped on him with only a weekend to respond, turning what would have been an impossible task into actionable intelligence that revealed critical gaps in the opposing party's production. Fresh off his testimony in Pictiva versus Samsung, a case with over $1 billion at stake that resulted in a $190 million verdict in East Texas, Dr. Miller brings unique insights into how AI is transforming both the efficiency and effectiveness of expert testimony. From his 21 cases spanning patent infringement to trade secrets, including high-stakes ITC battery dispute between SK Innovation and LG that settled for $1.8 billion, he's seen how technology is reshaping litigation. Today, we'll explore how AI can be a powerful tool for experts, discuss the unique challenges of East Texas patent litigation, and uncover how this technology is fundamentally changing what's possible in complex technical cases. So on that note, let's welcome Dr. Miller on the show. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. So let's jump right in, and I'm very curious about the 30 gigs of CSV files. I dread CSV files, and I can't even imagine most computers can't even open 30 gigs of CSV files. So when they dump that much data on you on a Thursday and give you a deadline for Monday, what do you even do?
Yeah, so this was actually last year. This was in 2024, and the files, as you said, there was about 30 gigs. Each file was probably about 250 megabytes, which is too large for Microsoft, too many rows for Microsoft Excel to open it, and I didn't have any of the tools that were used to produce it. It was however many columns of otherwise unlabeled, so timestamp data. And my first question was, do we have access to the equipment that actually gathered the data? I asked counsel this, and the answer was, of course, no. We don't know what equipment this was generated on. We have no real information. And also, it would be really cool to have some understanding of it by Monday because we have to meet with the judge. So the first thing I tried to do was I would try to open up the files and plot them like a normal person would. And yeah, you couldn't open them all the way, but I could at least get a sense of what the structure of the data was. And I could see the structure of the raw data, and I could see the graphs that the other side had produced, which was the analysis of the data. So I knew what I was going to try to reproduce. And so the question was how. And the answer ended up being I went to ChatGPT, and you can't upload this is confidential data, so I can't upload it. It has to stay local on my computer, but I can say, well, I have a file that has the following structure, right? And here's what I would like to be able to do. I'd like you to be able to look through, this was a battery cycling file. So I would like to be able to look through and say, okay, it's going to charge to the top and it's going to discharge to the bottom. How much capacity is discharged during that cycle? How does that change when you cycle it 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times? So that was the kind of question that I would ask it, and ChatGPT would generate me code. And a year and a half ago, the code would break, and I would copy the code into my compiler. By the way, I should say, I've never coded in Python before, and all of the code is written in Python. So first I had to ask ChatGPT how to set up a Python environment and execute it on my laptop.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, but it's very good. It's
Yeah.
very good at walking you through the
Oh, yeah.
steps.
Yeah. It is. It is. Sorry, go
And
ahead.
so back then I would paste into the compiler and I would execute and there would be an error and then I would copy the error, put that back to ChatGPT, say I got this error, and it would say, "Oh, sorry, I messed up. Here's the new." And it probably took about 4 hours of going back and forth, iterating, refining my request because I didn't request quite the right thing.
Hmm.
Um, until we finally got something that I could actually start to use. And then it was, how do I do this on an entire folder's worth of files? Um, and then it was just crunch time,
And
right?
this was before we had tools like Cursor and like
Yeah.
now you have Claude Code and which would,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
which is a different level altogether. So,
yeah, so I mean, let's like going back my history. Like I was a programmer coming out of high school in 1988. I in 1988 and 1989, my summer jobs were to write an accounts receivable package for a blueprinting company,
uh,
and I wrote it using something called Turbo Pascal, which you have to
yeah.
be over 50 to recognize.
I've
Um,
heard of it. I'm not 50
yeah,
yet,
yeah, yeah.
so but
It's it's
I've
you
heard of
know
Pascal. Yeah.
but I haven't like and so I knew how to code, but that was a different language, right?
Hmm.
And I haven't really thought hard about coding since then. So I don't use like Cursor. I'm not doing anything that sophisticated, right? The coding that I've done is measured in hundreds of lines now, not thousands or tens of thousands. I don't have to worry about juggling a complex environment.
Yeah.
So the chat window is fine for me.
Hmm.
But it broke a lot back then, right? It broke a lot. If I fast forward to today, I'm using the same kind of environment for a consulting project right now. So not legal. I'm running a technology project for a client. And I told them when they hired me to run this project, there was no expectation that I'd be coding at all. But it was very clear that they needed to have a computer model of what they were doing, and it was just physics, right? So you can just ask GPT to solve physics problems for you. So I've built up a few hundred lines of code for them, and now it's all one shot. Like now it just works on the first try. It's just astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read somewhere that recently it also solved one of like a math problem that had been unsolved for like more than 100 years.
Yeah, I'm not like I've read a little bit about this. So I want to be clear, like I'm not an expert in
Uh-huh.
LLMs or anything like that. I'm a user. That one, my understanding was that that was not as clean as that first
Yeah.
announcement suggested.
So when we were talking about this case, you also told me that you found relevant data in almost 160 unlabeled CSV files that the
Yeah.
opposing counsel had missed. So, do you think AI is going to change, or probably it's already changed, the discovery chess game?
I assume so. So, I'm looking at this from the perspective of an expert, right? And
Yeah.
every time I come into a case now, there ends up being a reason for me to code. So the one that you just explained was a separate case where it was 160 unlabeled CSV files. And again, I can open these things and look at them with Excel, but I don't know which one has the information that I want. And I certainly don't know how to analyze to look for things that the other side hasn't produced, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't part of their analysis.
Mhm.
So I can do things within a short period of time that their experts didn't do, period, right? Because they don't necessarily, these tools are not evenly used right now. But there was another case that I did, a trade secret case, where it was a trade secrets were being asserted, and it was over 100 trade secrets, and there was a directory of, like, here are the trade secrets, here are specific files that were alleged to have been stolen from the plaintiff, and here's a directory where we have these files in. There was too much for a person to go through and just look at each of them independently. And the question I got from the lawyers was, how do we even start to think about this? How do we organize it? Right. And so again, I could use the ChatGPT to write me, or Claude, to write me Python code. that would do a search inside the directory, again, everything local. And then I could build what's called a graph, like a network diagram, which shows which folders are related to which other folders. And so you can see that here are 3 folders which are entirely separate from the rest of the case. If you analyze those 3 to start with, you'll be able to get somewhere, right? And it's not, the rest of it might be spaghetti, but we can start. So, yeah, there's no way you could get a start on any of these problems 2 years ago, even.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm hearing is that it's not a silver bullet where you just upload everything into ChatGPT because there are, again, ethical concerns, confidentiality issues that you have to be wary of as an expert. So
Yeah.
what you are using AI for is to expedite what you would have anyway done without technology, without ChatGPT, but because these tools are now available, you're able to do that in a more efficient way by asking the AI to write the code for you.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
the analysis and the methodology is still yours. It's not ChatGPT's.
The methodology is still mine. I'm coming up, so nobody's asking me to go look something up on ChatGPT, right? The question is, what's in these files, right? So this is another tool, like Excel. If you're very good at Excel, you can go through things pretty quickly. This allows you to write some code to go do that, to automate those tasks, right? So you're automating yourself.
So would you say that as litigation becomes more complex and as companies, individuals, we are all generating more and more data every day. Experts who don't embrace AI, do you feel they are going to become obsolete with time?
So I can't tell you what other experts are like and do. I can tell you that I've spoken to attorneys. I have a consulting practice, and when I get engaged in a case, I prioritize that case, right? And so I will do my own writing. And not my understanding is most experts don't, right? So if somebody says we need to have a 30-page declaration, I'll be like, okay, I'll get you a draft tomorrow, right? I can write about 3 pages an hour is sort of what I come out to, right? If it's simple. Um, and I'll just say, tell my other clients I can't, right? Most experts can't like a faculty member can't stop their day job. They got to go to class. So they're not going to be able to dive in the same way. And when you can dive in like this, it matters. So yeah, you can think about it as like it's an amplifier of your expertise, and it's an amplifier of your capabilities. If you are fully engaged, you get a radically amplified version of you. But if you're not, you get the same you. So I think that there's going to be a gap growing between those who use it and those who don't. I think that there are lots of reasons to hire a guy who wrote the textbook on the subject that you're having the case for, and ChatGPT is not going to do a thing about that. But if you actually if the analysis matters, then there's a huge difference.
So what do you see the learning curve for experts? Like, let's say I'm an expert, I'm not really very tech savvy, but I want to start using AI because I understand that that is the way to go and it will help me be more efficient, more effective. So where should I start? What would your
Yeah.
suggestion be?
I mean, obviously you need to play with these things. Everybody is starting by having AI write for them and by having AI search for them. And I'll do the search one first because that's sort of clear. It's a better version of a Google search. Which is in turn a better version of going to the library and looking through the stacks, right? And deep research, ChatGPT's deep research has been my go-to tool for that. The wonderful thing about deep research is that you can do a kind of search that's incredibly hard to do otherwise. And I'll give you a specific example. There's a technology, so I'm a chemist, right? And one of the topics that I testified on recently in one of my cases was a topic called XPS, or X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy. And as somebody, I've used this tool for 25 years, right? So I understand this, but there was a question that I had very specifically about how particular chemical compounds behave in XPS. And there's XPS, you shine X-rays at a substrate and it knocks electrons loose, and you measure the energy of the electrons, and you can learn about what molecules are there and what the structure is. So the energy of the electrons that come out, like I wanted to know what molecules had energies between two numbers. Like I want to look between 53 and 54 and a half, right? I can't Google that. It's just not possible. Like you'd have to be Googling for the individual numbers, like 54.3 EVs in quotes. With ChatGPT, with deep research, I can tell it that, and it will go through the literature and it'll find something in that range. And again, that capability is totally inaccessible to me. Um, I mean, I don't know how much like you use deep research to interview people like me, but you can scour a lot in a short period of time, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm on the Claude camp with
oh,
with AI, but again, I mean, it does an equally good job of thinking, extended research. So
yeah,
in fact, yes, we do start with when we want to interview somebody, we would do our research. We'll talk to the expert, so we'll get to know them. But again, when it comes to highly technical experts like yourselves, a lot like most of the technology that you would work on, I would, there's no way I can be prepared to interview on the technical aspects in a decade, forget
right.
a couple of weeks. So that is again where these tools come very handy, where we would give them your CV, and now with with their ability to search the internet, we don't even have to give them the CV. At times, we'll just pass in the LinkedIn profile, and from there it will start crawling. It will go fetch the website, the CV, the different articles you've written, so on and so forth, and then it will come up with a fairly good outline, which we will then take, and that becomes the starting point for us to then
Yeah,
review the outline, see it makes sense, make our own changes, and that is when we'll send it to the expert
yeah.
for them
Well,
to
that's
sign off. Yeah.
yeah. Well, but your process seems right. And by the way, I prefer Claude for anything involving writing. I think Claude's a better writer. ChatGPT deep research is still sets the bar for me in
Mhm.
terms of depth of research and the reports that I get and the citations that are embedded. But yeah, you also got to check it all, and it mostly is right. But one of the things I like about doing expert work is that unlike everything else that I do as a consultant, the bar is like, no, you really need to do this right.
Yeah.
Like the lawyers really deeply care that you get all the details right. And that's not always the case in industry, right? In industry, it's like, you know what, ship it. Like we're done. We'll worry about it in version two, right? There's no version two of a trial.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
yeah, and more than the lawyer that who has retained you, the opposing lawyer is more interested in making sure that you've gotten it right, because if they can find something that you haven't gotten right, oh, that's
yeah,
that's
no,
their silver bullet, sir.
yeah, there are people who are being paid $1,000 an hour to check my work. It's like
Yeah.
it matters deeply. So look, obviously you asked before about how can an expert get in, and the writing is important. If I need to write something, if I needed to write like if for an introduction to an expert report, if I wanted to write a summary on how XPS works,
Yeah.
I might have Claude or ChatGPT do a draft. I might rewrite the whole thing myself, but even that act, right? The art of good writing is understanding what information to present in what order. And ChatGPT and Claude will give you that structure very quickly. Where a lot of times, even if you've done the thing for 25 years, you have to stop and think because you've never really had to explain it. And honestly, nobody will be reading your expert report but the lawyers. And yet, I feel like it still matters to write it clearly and actually relevant in a legal case. The things that you write in your expert report at some level set the boundaries on what it is that you can express later on in the matter. And and so you could do something like again being very sensitive to confidentiality issues here, you can ask an LLM in general whether or not you've left anything out, right? So if I want to again give a summary of XPS, X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, I can try to use the tool like this to help me think about, okay, I'm going to have to testify on this in a year. And I don't know what's going to be important in that case in the year. So I want to make sure that I've been comprehensive. And the AIs are great for that too.
And also, I think for experts who are again working in a very technical field and they have the challenge to explain these things, like the whole thing you explained about striking the X-ray and knocking off the molecule, and then
Right.
and then measuring the, I don't know what, like whatever it was.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the electron energy, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
The question is, no, when you're explaining it to the jury, one creative way I can think of is that, okay, this is the concept that I have to explain to the jury. Give me an analogy that
Yes.
would make it simpler for them to understand. And I think AI would
Yeah.
be a great tool in coming up with examples in the field of sports or something like that, that juries, like common people would find it easy to understand.
And so I've absolutely done that. Like, give me something that put this in a way that I can explain it to a high school
Yeah.
junior. I absolutely have never used any of that, but it helps me think about it for myself, right? I would always want to talk with counsel about using metaphors because metaphors can sometimes be dangerous. Because again, the other side is trying very much to take your words out of context. You better be very sharp if you're going to be using anything like that. Having said that, yeah, explain this like how would a truck driver understand this? How would a nurse understand this? Right? It's really quite good at that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your recent case a little, and the Pictiva versus Samsung case. And I believe it happened in the United States District Court in the Eastern District of Texas, where most patent litigation happens. And you say that the East Texas is wild.
Yeah.
So let's start from there before we dive into the case. Like, what about East Texas makes it wild for you?
I mean, it
Why do you
comes
think
at you
so?
fast. So Judge Gilstrap, who runs that court, and he he's got it down. He's
Mhm.
obviously he's done quite a bit of this. So there are a few things that are different about East Texas, right? One is that you really like this is totally tactical, but you have to clear your schedule for longer than you'd expect because the way that the courts are booked, Judge Gilstrap wants the court to be active, right? And so sometimes cases will settle
Mhm.
and as a result, if they settle and there's no new case to come into that court, then that's a missed opportunity to get another patent trial done. And there's a waiting list, and you don't find out if you're going to go until that last possible moment. So we went out to East Texas once, and we thought we were going to go, but the case didn't, ahead of us didn't settle, and we ended up having to leave, right? And what that meant, like practically for me, was the original expectation was that the case was going to happen in the summer, and the case happened at the end of October. And that means that I have to tell all of my clients again, guys, I love you dearly, and I told you I was going to be able to do this thing, but I can't. I was supposed to lead a workshop on flow battery technologies, and it's still like it pains me that I couldn't do it because I was on the stand that day. And for the longest time, I assumed I was going to be able to make it because we were going to surely this case that was scheduled originally for July was going to go before the end of October.
Mhm.
Didn't happen, right? So you have to make a commitment. And rule number one in life is you got to show up. So you take a case like this, you got to recognize that showing up like is actually not the easiest thing in the world. You have to make some compromises. The second thing is that it happens fast. You got a week, right? And in the Pictiva Samsung case, it's 5 patents.
Yeah.
So both sides are charged with explaining 5 very technical patents to a jury of truck drivers and nurses and whatnot, so that they can have jury selection, all the facts explained, and closing arguments by Friday, right? That's, you know, it's If it was one patent, it would feel a little bit different, but if it's
Hmm.
five patents at
Yeah.
once, that's a lot, right? It's a
And
lot
there
for the
would be,
experts to track.
yeah, so that's what I was going to come to. And were there other experts on the case, or you were the only, like, I believe there were
No.
three experts on the five patents.
Yeah. So there were five patents. I was limited to one of them. I
Okay.
was actually limited to one claim in
Hmm.
one patent. Uh, there were two other experts who worked on the remainder of the case, and then we also had a couple other experts who were not offering expert reports in the same way, but they were responding to specific facts and addressing specific facts that were claimed at the trial.
And I believe you were for Samsung, and your patent was found not to infringe.
Yes,
But the
yeah, the one
others
that I
led
took.
to 190 million in damages. So can you tell us a little bit about the background of the case, and like what technical aspect did
Yeah,
you opine on?
yes, I know that the court was open, so I'm going to look at this from the perspective of where the court I know was open and what I can say.
Hmm.
The case revolved around organic light emitting displays, or OLED technology. So most of our phones now use OLED screens. Not quite all of them, but the higher end ones, and increasingly the mid tier as well. Now, organic light emitting diodes. I got my PhD in organic chemistry, and I worked on these organic electronic molecules back in the 90s, right? And I worked in display technology when I was at Texas Instruments from 2000 to 2005. And so that's my background. But I'm not an expert in organic light emitting diodes specifically. They're organic molecules, though they interact in specific ways. And there was one claim that said, well, this molecule has to bond to that molecule.
Hmm.
And the way that the claim was written, there's a constructed term about what this kind of bond was. I have to testify as to okay, we've done testing to look to see if this bond is here. Let me speak to this matter as a chemist.
You brought back not so great memories from high school
Yeah.
for
You know,
organic chemistry was
organic chemistry, like
my
I get
least
that.
favorite subject.
Yeah, no, I don't talk about the fact that I did organic chemistry at parties and things like that. I don't want to like terrorize people. I thought it was cool. And the funniest thing is my daughter, apparently this is genetic. My daughter thinks it's cool as well. She's doing her PhD
Oh.
in the similar field because so I want to say that this is just your genes.
Mhm.
You just were not born to be a chemist, and apparently other people are.
No, and I'm sure it also, like, just having um, that environment around growing up, or and I'm sure a lot also depends on the teachers you have.
My daughter wanted to be an astronaut for Halloween when she was 4. I can still picture her in the
Uh-huh.
orange costume, right? That was her thing. And we, my wife and I, always assumed that she was going to be a scientist, having come from me, who is a scientist. She has a grandfather, my wife's father is a physicist. My grandfather taught biology at Brooklyn College.
Oh,
She is
wow.
a fourth generation PhD. So yes,
Yeah.
she
Okay.
has she got to see it. But also she never liked any science class that she took in growing up. In grade school and high school, she didn't like any of them. It wasn't until college that it snapped into focus.
Some gene turned
So
on, you know.
yeah, the gene turned on and she
Yeah.
just got the right teacher, right?
Yeah,
So
I think
shout out,
that makes a huge difference. Yeah, the
yeah,
right teachers.
shout out to Bryn Mawr College for having done their job well. They pushed her towards what was apparently her destiny.
Well done to the college. So your first case also involved, and you were just 39 when you started doing this, and it involved MEMS addition.
Yeah.
So, and now you're handling everything from batteries to pharmaceuticals. So from then to now, do you see lawsuits becoming more complex and
So
more technical?
okay, so I have to look at it from my perspective as an expert,
Hmm.
right? So when I was 39 years old, I was an expert. I had worked at Texas Instruments, like I said, on this technology called MEMS, which is
Hmm.
the display technology I was talking about. And the technology was so new at the time that there were no old gray-haired people to bring in. I was 39. The other side's expert was younger than that. And the judge was like flabbergasted, right? He was making jokes about it. And so I needed a lot of help back then it was the first case that I did, and the counsel, the associate who was working on that case was absolutely unfathomably good, and he guided me and got me to understand this stuff. That was just a single patent. The stuff that I'm seeing now is more complex. I don't know how much of that is the fact that I have more experience and people are tapping me for more complex cases. Obviously, 5 patents at once in the current case. When I was doing SK versus LG, I was actually working on 1 patent, but it was part of a series of claims, suits and countersuits. So, what I'm seeing is increasingly sophisticated, but I'm a biased sample, right? That's just my experience.
And and even in that case, I believe you had more than 2,000 pages of reports.
It was a patent infringement case, and the infringement was alleged across a host of products, right? So I think there were something like 12 batteries that LG was making that SK was testing were infringing. And so that meant there was a several hundred page main report and then a series of appendices. Now, I want to be clear that of those 2,000 pages, a lot of it was cut and paste because it was 12. It was like, here's the structure, let's put in the data, right? And so we collected a lot of data. So I had to lead the collection of all the data. I had to analyze all the data. The lawyers totally, we dove in to structure this thing and to get everything, get all the commas in the right place in 12 different appendices.
Hmm. And I believe there was some presidential intervention in that case as well. So did that have
Yeah,
an impact at some point of time? Tell us about that.
yeah. So this was an ITC case, right? And so the ITC, just like East Texas has its own personality, the ITC has its own personality. And so it's actually an administrative function. So it's part of the executive branch. And the way that these ITC claims, in this case, LG had won already at that point through summary judgment a trade secret case against SK, where LG was basically asking for SK's almost built factory in Georgia to be shut down. And that almost built factory in Georgia was thousands of jobs, and that had political implications.
Hmm.
And SK was doing a countersuit on infringement. And if SK was victorious, LG's existing factory in Michigan would be at threat of being shut down. So this was during the Biden administration. Everybody was very big on getting battery manufacturing done in the USA. And you have a litigation which has serious political consequences in the state of Georgia, in the state of Michigan, nationally. And so, yeah, the Biden administration, so I think, was first the Trump administration. We thought that was going to be a decision that was made in the Trump administration, and it got pushed out into the Biden administration. And eventually, I testified at the ITC in that case. And the way the ITC works is you don't have a jury, you have a judge who makes the determination. And so after my testimony, but before the judge came back with a determination on our patent case, the matter was settled. I mean, I don't know what happened really. I was not in the room.
Hmm.
But what I can say is that there was like a day left before the Biden administration would have to make a determination. The Biden administration can just vacate the whole thing, right? So LG's case could be thrown away. SK's case could effectively be thrown away. They settled with a day left. And they settled for, I think it was original request was $2.7 billion. And they settled for, I think, 1.8.
Yeah. How do you even decide what cases to take, given how varied and wide your expertise can be applied to? Like that would
Yeah,
be is it an easy decision? Is it a difficult decision? And this is something that, also brings me to the business of finding experts. That's something that we
yeah,
help attorneys do. And at times we would lean on the expert themselves to tell us,
yeah.
especially when it's so technical and so complex that there's no way if unless until somebody's from a science background, even then. So how do you decide, okay, if a case it looks like it's within really in your lane or it's somewhat an overlap, And how do you decide, okay, I should take this case, or no, this is not something that I should take, even if the stakes are high, the money is good?
Yeah, so nobody wants me to take a case. I don't want to take a case if it's not going to be right, but it's not always obvious, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's just use batteries as an example. I've done several battery cases. I do a lot of my consulting right now. I've been doing electrochemistry in batteries for almost like a couple decades now, really. Um, so I have some expertise here, but of course, there's like battery cell chemistry and cell construction, which is what I have more expertise in. And then there's like, oh, we have a giant battery installation, and there was a defect, or there was a fire, or there was something that's happening at the systems level, at the utility level, right? Um, I'm not the right guy for that bigger project level thing, but I get a lot of calls for that, and so I'll tell people, this one doesn't fit me if it's obvious that it doesn't fit me. Sometimes it's not obvious. Like if there was an issue if what was important about the fire was understanding cell chemistry, then I can be more use. And so I'll have a conversation and I'll say, look, here are the kind of projects that I work on. Here's where I'm most useful. Here's where I'm not. And I try to work with counsel, but it requires a call.
And how has like the aspect of putting yourself out there as an expert changed over the years? How did you get your first case? And from
Yeah.
then to now, how has your approach to putting your name out there as an expert changed? What have you done since then? And what's your key takeaways?
So the first bit is how did I get the job is easy. The how do I put my name out there is actually kind of hard. But we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. The first case that I got was this MEMS case. And
Mm-hmm.
again, there were no experts. Counsel who ended up retaining me, interviewing me and retaining me, reached out to a friend of mine who I'd met at a conference in the field. And she had a real job and couldn't do it. And so she said, call this guy, right? And I got the phone call. Like I knew nothing. I was dimly aware that this whole enterprise exists,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, only dimly. So I had to be educated. But again, they needed me because there literally were no other experts available. The field was too new. So thank you, Allie. I appreciate your referring me. Since then, after that, the relationship worked well with that firm. They ended up retaining me for a few other cases after that. But, really some of the folks who I'd been working with left the firm for a while, and that relationship just sort of naturally died down. I went and did my usual consulting things. I've been doing independent consulting mostly since 2008. So there's lots of other jobs for me to do. And it was only after a career arc I decided to step back from that I started to do expert witnessing again right around 2019. And so since then, I got contacted via organizations like yours, right? And I would say that the majority of cases have come through firms that do expert search, right? Right now, lawyers will look and find my name, say, "Oh, you did LG versus SK, right? Let's have a conversation," because it's
Yeah.
the ITC publishes this stuff, right? So, they can find me in databases. There's not, other than developing relationships with expert firms, there's not a good way for me to find a path to market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is that as an expert, I don't really want more than one case at a time, because every case becomes a crisis at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't have multiple crises like that burning. So the cadence that I get from expert search firms, and whatever direct contacts, that ends up being enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me. I'm not trying to, like, I don't have a team to feed. This is something that I like doing, but I have a consulting business that has a funnel and behaves somewhat more rationally.
In a way that makes you the dream expert, because all attorneys would ask for, hey, find me somebody who does it a little bit but doesn't do it full time, and they have another job, a consulting or something that they do, but they also do it.
Yes.
And yeah, so again, I'll go back to the marketing bit a little, and especially your digital presence. So how do you differentiate and make sure that you're communicating about your consulting work and your expert witness work, both online?
Yeah.
And like, do you have different websites for the two type of work, or do you like only use a single site to talk about everything and differentiate there? How do you like, what's your approach to
Yeah.
that?
So I do have different web presences for the two that are optimized around different areas of what I do. So I have my own website, sethadrianmiller.com. You're welcome to find me. I need to update it with the latest stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that just focuses on me as an expert. Here's a resume. Here's some detail that you can find online if you're searching for me. Also, I have a professional website for consulting, which I'll be honest, I haven't updated in quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I have LinkedIn, which I update with some degree of frequency depending on how much work I'm under. I will make sure to put expert in my profile on LinkedIn and make reference to it because everybody crawls LinkedIn. But the goal is just to have enough footprints so that somebody can find you and that, my hope is that again, with AI tools like yours, that breadcrumb trail is going to be enough, right? Because it used to be not in the dark ages like of a couple years ago, you would have to have keywords and you'd have to optimize like this. It's not obvious to me that keywords matter as much going forward. Like SEO, all of that stuff exists in a different form, but now you are going to be able to do much more sophisticated searches. And I think if when I come back this holiday season, as everything sort of dies down, I want to come back to my expert site. What I think I want to do is I want to put in more details and think to myself, I'm feeding an AI now. I'm not feeding keywords. And much like resumes got longer and more detailed so that we could fit all the keywords in,
Yeah.
my expectation is that my website should do that, but with context rather than keywords, right? And so I have to think about that.
Yeah. In fact, from the world of SEO, we are kind of entering into the world of AEO, the answer engine optimization, where you are optimizing the content on your website accordingly. And more than keywords, we have seen FAQs really work well.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So we have started, we are working on this, and we are trying to create on every, like we have pages for, again, like patent infringement expert witness or trademark, trade secrets expert witness. So we would then build FAQs for all of those pages, because most people are either asking questions to these LLMs and they are looking for an answer. So as an expert, and this probably you'd be better off thinking about, okay, what questions would an attorney ask if they wanted to find an expert like me? And ask ChatGPT to tell you the questions. You don't even have to
Oh,
sit
that's
and think
also
about
great.
those
So
questions.
this is actually gold. Thank you, because I this is something that's been nagging at me, and
Mhm.
I just finished this court case, and it kind of absorbed all my attention, and and also I had to tell all my other clients that I needed to step away, and so since finishing the court case, they've absorbed all of my attention, and I need to structurally think about this. An FAQ is fantastic because I can separate it out. It reads logically to a human, but also it's parsable exceptionally well. So that's great.
Yeah, and in fact, while you're at it, if your site, you would have also set up the Google Webmaster Console. And so there it tells you for what keywords and what searches your site came up and how many clicks it got, impressions versus hits. So you like, at least we are seeing like more and more question formed queries or long tail searches where somebody is asking a really long question and then our site has come up. But if we have not answered that specific question, then like people have not clicked on the site.
Right.
So that is again like a good way of tracking, okay, what long form queries are people writing, and then maybe optimize around that. That would also
So
be
I,
a
I want to just make an observation, which is like, A, this is great, but
Mhm.
B, despite the fact that I use LLMs for coding and on a technical level, I can do these things now that I didn't think of before. Marketing is not the thing that I naturally go to. And so I don't, even though I'm using this all the time, it doesn't occur to me, oh, you know what? I need to ask ChatGPT how to structure this, right? Which is absolutely the correct answer now. But even I, who use this stuff all the time, I don't have that habit yet, right? You need to, like, you've obviously been thinking about this a lot, and there's something to be said still for the human expertise to know that you can ask the question in the first
Yeah.
place and to get you that foothold, right?
Yeah.
Like I like to say that LLMs can take you from being bad in a topic to being mediocre at a
Yeah.
topic. And that's a huge gain. Like coding, I can be a mediocre coder, that's fantastic. But you at least have to be bad. You can't be completely incompetent because then you don't know what you can even ask.
That I think, yeah, knowing what to ask and structuring your prompts, I think that is the one key quality you need to have. Like in my case, I got lucky because I learned Python during the
Right.
COVID pandemic, and it happened because everybody went home. Every time I wanted some metrics from the database, I could no longer just walk to the DB administrator and ask him to run a query. So the feedback loop became longer, and I was like, okay, I have to learn to do this myself. And then, so I first learned a little bit of SQL, and from there, I was like, okay, I think the next step is Python. By the time ChatGPT came, I had become a bad coder. So I could read Python, I could write really shitty scripts that worked, but
Right.
my coders were like, okay, don't push it to production. Okay, like don't try
Right.
to make pull requests. We are not gonna push it
I
to
don't want
and
I don't want
yeah,
anybody relying on my code but me.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah,
I mean, I was saying that, but now with these new tools, now like by the time ChatGPT and Cursor came, and then Claude Code came, now I can proudly say that some of my code is in production on the site, and it just becomes so easy and fast. Instead of giving them a document that tries to explain what I want the tool to do, how do I want the interface to behave, you can now just do a prototype and give it to the engineers, and then they can take it from there.
yeah, this like reinterpretation of coding, right? Where there used to be this whole kids learn to code, right? That's going to be the key to your future. And
Yeah,
now there's a backlash. The secret is learn to code badly.
yeah,
If you can learn to code badly, ChatGPT can make you the mediocre coder that will keep a
yeah.
website going or be able to solve a problem or whatever. And I think that it's true in everything. Like the key shifts that like we have to have in our mental models of the world is is the liberal arts approach to the world where you learn a little bit about everything
Hmm.
allows you to know that you can ask a question and so there's this narrowness of focus that was favored again in the old days of 2 years ago. And now, yeah, the guy who can code badly and do all of these other things in a mediocre fashion and is good and has this expertise, right? You need the one hook,
Hmm.
but then you get supplemented by being crappy at a bunch of things, but not completely incompetent.
Yeah. I think jack of all trades is not such a bad thing after all.
No, like for me, it's incredible.
Yeah,
Like I went to a
yeah,
liberal arts college. Like I was interested when I started college. I thought I could go to economics or psychology or chemistry, and I went to chemistry, and that's fine. But I didn't lose my love of all of these other things, and so it's incredibly validating to be like, oh, now like I can like this could be useful, right? I can build an economic model of something,
hmm.
right? I can do some useful things.
So talking of AI and economic models, so, like what's your take on this existential question that's been like that the whole legal industry is facing, which is the billable hour, with AI making things fast for attorneys and for experts. Have you given pricing any thought? Like, how do you bill for pricing? Like for your services, would you still continue billing at an hourly rate? Or because AI is there, you're spending less time, but you're having more impact. So could there be an impact-based pricing?
I'll answer this at a couple levels. Like as a consultant, right? Because I have
Yeah.
this alter ego where I'm like a normal everyday,
Hmm.
like PhD science consultant.
Yeah, like the
Um,
Peter Parker version of you.
yeah. So okay, so in consulting, if I have done the thing before and I understand what the problem is going to be, then I can offer a package rate. And now if I know that I can solve this because I have, let's say that I already built a tool and I do cost modeling for batteries and I've done it for carbon capture and for other things. So I have
Mhm.
like this background. So I can come up to speed quickly. I can build you a model. It's going to cost this much. Here's your flat rate. But if you can't articulate the problem, and a lot of times clients can't articulate the problem, I'm like, you know what? We're either going to bill on a retainer basis until we figure it out, or we're going to bill on an hourly basis. Work is dynamic. The people
Yeah.
don't know what the problem is. And so I can't scope out how much I'm going to be needed because it could be that everything pivots. And I've had that happen in one of the cases I was on recently. The other side was a world's expert in this super narrow area of technology where there was one claim word that this mattered immensely to understand what this word meant and to be able to say that you're the expert in this word. That wasn't what ended up going to trial. And so their
Mhm.
expert was ended up being the not necessarily the perfect match for the stuff that did go to trial, right? Legal stuff goes in wild directions sometimes. And so you got to bill hourly, in my view. However, right, like from my perspective as an expert, I can bill more hours because of ChatGPT because I can do more things.
Mhm.
Previously, I couldn't have analyzed 30 gigabytes
Mhm.
of data and worked through the weekend to produce a report. I have more capabilities to offer. And so, if you have the tools and if you have the time, and again, in my world of PhD science, most experts are academics. They don't have the time to be able to figure this stuff out. They don't have the time to say, oh, what you really need is this other thing. Is it okay if I go build it for you? And the lawyers are like, whatever I charge, it's less than an associate in San Francisco or Boston,
Yeah.
right? So if I can do the thing at a higher quality than they can because I'm the expert, right? And I have these skills, my scope of being able to help the case expands. So I think the classic answer is for LLMs, you get fewer people doing more things in less time. And for me specifically, that ends up being because my area can't be replaced. If I can help out in other ways, if I can do the data analysis that you would have to have a special analyst for, then that increases my scope and increases my time strangely.
So that becomes that becomes a win-win for
You
you.
know, everybody
Yeah,
wins.
everybody wins.
I
Yeah.
mean, just in general, like
Hmm.
again, if I can write something in
Yeah.
a way that is acceptable to the lawyers, they're like, yeah,
Hmm.
you're cheaper. Like the client wins, and the lawyers then get like an extra hour of sleep, which is matters a lot to them too.
But what's your take on the fact that like powerful tools in the right hands can be amazing, but powerful tools in the wrong hands or hands that don't know how to use them well can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
So let's take the example of an expert who thinks that, okay, this is great, I can use this to generate a report, and they don't really understand hallucinations or what not to use AI for. Like, for example, there was a case involving deepfakes where a professor who was supposed to be the expert on deepfakes ended up citing a hallucinated article in the expert report. So maybe they were not paying attention because they definitely knew about the risks. But experts who don't understand the risks, what would you say to them and to the attorneys who may feel that, okay, AI will benefit us if the expert uses it, but what should I as an attorney tell experts or caution them when they're using AI on my case?
Yeah. I mean, look, yes, people are going to screw up. and not everybody's ethical and not everybody shows up, right? Again, first rule is to show up. There was a movie called Real Genius. This is a bit of a stretch of a comment, but there was a joke in that movie where the old faculty member is telling the young graduate student the most important thing to do is check your references. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
this is a problem that's always existed at some level, right? And AI makes it easy for everybody to not check their references, whereas previously that was a very niche joke. Like, so, so on the other hand, um, if you have access to tools that, again, you have to be very sensitive to what you're allowed to do, whose software you're allowed to apply to what documents, right? Super important to keep that straight. But these engines are capable of helping you check references as well. So, which is not to say that you should rely on them, but they can find things that are wrong quickly also. So if you are worried that an expert is making things up en masse, you may be able to quickly find an example. And if you have found one cockroach, the odds are that there are others hiding nearby. At the end of the day, again, getting these citations right matters immensely to everybody. So
Hmm.
you gotta show up. Um, and there's no substitute for that. Not everybody does it, but that hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think the standard should be like, check it before the other side checks it.
Please. Oh,
Because
I mean,
that's what seems to be happening. It's the opposing counsels who are finding these hallucinated citations. So it's clearly possible to spot them before you file something in court.
yeah. I mean, they have a room full of very smart, well-paid, extraordinarily tired associates just churning through this stuff, right? Like you have to expect that that's the case. And again, those guys also have the tools. So you better adopt.
Hmm. But many established experts and even attorneys, they resist, new technology. Like now with LLMs, a lot of law firm, like everybody wants to come across as an AI deployed and AI savvy law firm. But still, we keep hearing that most of them are doing it for marketing purposes. And the day to day usage of a lot of these tools is not that great. So, even like unlike attorneys, even experts, they tend to resist new technology. So, what's your message to those experts?
Yeah, stop that. I mean, this is super important. So I'm doing a project right now on consulting
Mhm.
where the general counsel for the firm that I'm doing the work for has a standard stipulation in the contract saying that you're not allowed to use LLMs. Full stop. And the
How do
answer
you
was
do?
no, 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 no. Like this is not okay. This is the client for whom I have built a physics-based model of their technology that they did not think was possible to build. And I've done this by writing sentences into a computer. And part of the reason that they haven't is that they don't have a culture of doing this stuff, right? And look, general counsel has a point. What we ended up coming to was, we have enterprise ChatGPT, and there are strict rules about it not training on the data that you're putting in, which is what we want to avoid. And so you need to be very clear about those kinds of capabilities, right? Whether, whatever level of security and confidentiality you have to meet, there are ways to do this that are probably affordable, right?
Yeah.
So everybody, please, like this stuff, again, if you're not doing it, opposing counsel is, and probably, or at least there's a risk. So you can and we all should train a little bit and practice.
Two last questions. Do you think AI will democratize access to justice? And when I say that, it can be in a good way and a bad way. The bad way is that a lot of attorneys are complaining that people are filing, and not obviously not
Yeah,
in the kind of litigation that you consult on, but smaller cases where people are trying to represent themselves, and then they are drafting these briefs using using AI, and then
yeah.
they're making up all kinds of case laws and laws that don't exist. So that's one. And Could AI eventually replace the expert witness?
Oh, I love the second question. All right, let me answer the first one
Yeah.
first. Again, I
Mhm.
don't have specific legal expertise, but I will say that there's no question that you can see that the amount of work to do certain tasks is dropping,
Yeah.
right? And that the question becomes where, like in any field that I work in, again, outside of law, where's the scarce resource, right? The scarce resource is the courts, right? The risk is that we overwhelm the court system because unless the judges and staff are allowed to use AI also, then you just move the bottleneck. So we've moved the bottleneck from the litigants, from the plaintiffs to the courts. So just track the bottleneck. That's a concern that I share as a citizen more than as a guy who does patent and trade secret and whatnot work.
Mhm.
Um, on the patent and trade secret work, fascinating question. Like, is it possible? I'm going to go back to my XPS story. Is it
Yeah.
possible for counsel to write a background section on X-ray photo electron spectroscopy now? Yeah, like 95%, sure. Uh, but there, you need to have the expertise. And again, you need to show up to make sure that these things, you have the right information that's there. There's a lot of context that for the moment, the AI don't have. Ask me again in 18 months. But for right now, Anthropic and OpenAI and whatnot, they're hiring PhDs and asking them bunches of questions. And they're paying 100, 150, 200 an hour to PhD level folks to try
Yeah.
to train up, much like they went intersection to intersection taking photos in order to train Google Maps, right? We're getting maps of all knowledge. So my kind of expertise is in a cul-de-sac, like at the very end of this map, but you can still drive to it. Um, I don't see how, like, I feel weirdly secure in my job. I worry about my daughter who's doing the exact same career 30 years later. I don't know what her world is going to be like, but expertise right now, you need somebody who can explain something to a jury. You need somebody that, the jury isn't going to understand everything that I say. They're gonna look in my face. They're going to listen to my tone, and that is going to be I think one of the last things to change.
Yeah, I think we are fairly away from the dystopian world where the jury is AI, the judge is AI, everyone's AI, then including the expert witness. I'm pretty sure we are at least a few decades away from that. And I want to make one comment on the new generation where they are, like you said, preparing for a career 30 years later. But the advantage that they have is that they will be pretty, like AI native to begin with. So they would grow up like, I mean, even if like your daughter is already doing like in her PhD, but she would grow into her career with AI by her side.
Yeah,
So that
it's
advantage is there for them.
it is, but it's wild because like I know this has gone on long, but I'll just throw this out. Like, so my daughter is smart. She has gone through the school system and been patted on her head at every level of education and said, you may now advance. We would
Yeah.
encourage you to advance to the next thing. And so it is a little bit disheartening to have been praised all of your life for this thing that now a robot can do, maybe better than you. Now,
Hmm.
she still when she was studying for her quals, she'll use ChatGPT deep research in order to learn these like I want a review article on this incredibly obscure topic. Here it is, right 10 minutes later. So she gets to learn more and faster than I ever could have hoped to. And that's really cool. And and so the trick for her and for everybody of her age is to figure out where it is that the robots stop. The road doesn't go on forever. And maybe that is a jury being able to look you in the eye, and maybe it's somewhere else. I believe that she's like she's pretty good.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I think there's a future for her, but we don't really know what it is.
I'm sure they'll make their own future, and I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah,
That is
I'm
where I am.
I'm I'm in my mid 50s. My job is to soon get out of the way. Not yet, but soon. And I will respect that job and leave it to those guys to find out.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it will make us richer, it will make us smarter, and I'm hoping that at least for some of us, it'll make us even more engaged in the world because we'll have these new tools to interact. There's no guarantees. We have to make that future ourselves.
Thank you so much, Seth, for like sharing all your insights with us today. But before we let you get out of the way of this podcast today, one last question. How can people find you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So, I mean, the front door for everything is Seth Miller on LinkedIn. And if you do that plus expert, you can probably find me pretty quickly. You can obviously Google me. You can find me at sethadrianmiller.com. You can go to Ashish, who I am sure can find me as well. And that would be awesome for both of us. So, guys, I would hope to extend this conversation to everyone.
Thank you so much. This was really interesting. The one thing I keep saying again and again is that my favorite part of doing this podcast is that every episode is a different expert and the new things that I get to learn from everyone. It's a very wide spectrum, and that is something I truly love. This one, because we talked a lot about AI, it meant I could also contribute a little bit to the
I mean,
conversation.
and I love it because this is like I'm alone in the world. Who else am I going to talk with this about? So I appreciate the conversation. I hope the audience appreciates it too.
I'm sure they will. So thank you so much, and we hope to do this again sometime.
We'll follow up in 18 months and we'll see what the world has given us.
I don't know who said, I think it was Bill Gates who said that we always overestimate the speed of growth in what will happen in the 2 years and always underestimate the growth in 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that,
this field is a 2-year field though. It
that
is
has
a
changed. Yeah.
wild ride and it's good to be able to work with folks who have reason to stay on top of it.
So thank you once again. Have a good one, everyone. If you found this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help other users find this podcast and benefit from the insights shared by our guests. If you'd like to be featured as a guest on this show, please write to media@xlightum.com. See you in the next episode.